2025. I think it's going to be a good year.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, feels more stable.
Yeah, well, Happy New Year.
Yeah, cheers.
Gózalo, como lo canto y lo siento yo. Báilalo, gózalo, como lo canto.
You know, on second thought,
Okay, good. It's 2025.
There we are.
It showed up
Ready or not.
very quickly. It's odd. It feels like it's been really slow news, so I don't know if we have a lot to talk about or not.
Always a lot to cover and talk about. Where
Yeah.
is the market headed? What is it going to do this year?
Yeah. But first, I just want to acknowledge like the tragedy that is unfolding right now in Los Angeles is just unbelievable. There's a lot of folks who've lost everything, including some friends of mine. And it's just, shout out to all those folks in Los Angeles.
Yes.
We're sending you everything we got in New Mexico to help. But boy, that's going to shape some of our real estate market
It
this year.
is going to have an impact on our market. And it is so sad that it takes something like this. But yes, we're going to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. I want to talk about last year. We made some predictions. Good news, everybody. You all get to keep your jobs.
We have work to do.
And those predictions were as followed, that we'd see more inventory in the summer months, particularly, quite an influx, that buyers were going to be under more pressure to perform, considering interest rates and other challenges there, that prices wouldn't necessarily go down too much, but we would see the closed final sold price change because of challenges during negotiations.
Yes.
And that sellers and buyers would find a different balance, a more healthy balance. And I think we can all kind of pat ourselves on the back for that one. I think it was pretty close to what happened.
I think that's accurate.
I think we nailed it.
Yeah. So anyways, we get to keep our jobs, and at the end of this, we can throw out some predictions and see if we can keep them into the next year. But, starting with inventory, I think inventory in 2024 was the big change. What happened?
I think we saw an increase literally of about 40% in inventory across the board of the market, probably more so in the high end, in the luxury market.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we did. And, of course, in the fall and winter months, it comes down a little bit, but it's still higher now than it was a year ago.
Yeah, we talk about absorption rate, right? How many homes are on the market, their current buying, yada, yada. It's one of those terms that we throw around in our industry, but in effect, it just says how much is out there for buyers to purchase and how long, into the future will that last. And we've now entered the healthy zone, right? They say between 4 to 6, 7 months is kind of that healthy zone. And we're sitting right about 4.5, 5 months of inventory. So it does feel like we've reached a better balance right now with buyers and sellers.
Oh, well, thank goodness buyers have more to choose and select from, because that was one of the more painful aspects of our market beforehand.
Right. Well, and speaking of buyer challenges, right, we had two sort of rear their head this past year. One was we thought interest rates were going to be going down, and they really didn't, did they?
They're going up.
Kind of gone up a little bit, yeah.
Right. Yeah, due to the bond market and everything else, the interest rates have gone up, not down. And so despite what the Fed has been doing, it's still a challenge. And I think was today's current interest rate.
It's about 7% right now.
7%.
And there's still a lot of concerns out there about, does the Fed have inflation under control?
Right.
And that is yet to be seen. So I'm not sure what we can predict for interest rates this year. I'm not anticipating any drop for at least 6 months.
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of a pickle right now with the interest rate side of things. And
Yeah, the Fed has said right out loud that they do not anticipate dropping the interest rates much this year. So
yeah. Well, we'll see what the banking market can do there. They seem to get clever when they need to be. So, and actually on that front, I think it's actually pushed people to alternatives. So you've seen an increase of new home sales, correct?
Yeah, I've seen a lot more. In the past we'd see one here and there in our office, but in the past couple of weeks I've seen 4 close, which is pretty exceptional. We don't see that very often. So there's a lot more activity in the new build market, and I think there's a number of reasons. One, I think because buyers don't really have the funds to update older homes,
Right.
make repairs. We've been saying that for a while now. So they're just getting something that's brand new. Also, there's some programs that some of these builders can offer in terms of financing that work out a little bit more in their favor. So
Right,
it seems to be a good option right now.
A new build at 6% that you're not worried, you have a warranty on, you're not worried about spending another 50, 100 grand in
Yeah,
updates.
seems
or
like a
things
sweet deal.
Yeah. So, I think that's a trend we're going to continue to see. There's a number of other developments that are happening in Santa Fe, and it feels like that trend's going to move forward maybe more rapidly this year.
I think it will. The national home builders are very active in the Santa Fe market, and it seems like they're looking for more projects out there.
Yeah. And, not to get into the politics at all, but there's some threats out there of import tariffs and things like that. And so it also feels like there's a bit of a rush right now of trying to get appliances, other sort of home building things into the market, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The other area that we talked about was negotiations. Now, what have you been seeing there?
More negotiations. Short answer.
Yeah, a lot more
We're seeing-
negotiations.
we're seeing fewer homes selling at or above the asking price. We're seeing more negotiations coming down, but not more than 7-8% below the asking price. So I think sellers are getting more realistic with their asking prices. Buyers are feeling more comfortable offering less than the asking price, and there's more of a balance there.
Now, I would imagine that anytime you're dealing with more negotiations, that usually leads to more friction.
Yes.
How are terminations looking?
Terminations have actually declined, I think, recently, but
Yes and no. It depends on, which months you're looking at. In the fourth quarter, we actually did see a bit of a decline. October and November, there were fewer terminations in those months, which I think contributed to more sold properties in that quarter. But for the most part, looking at the data, it's pretty consistent with what we've seen in previous years. So there's no real, no huge change.
Yeah, not a big shift.
Right.
Yeah. Which is good. I mean, if you consider the amount of transactions that has occurred and, in relationship to terminations, I think there was a moment there definitely where the market was correcting itself. Sellers had higher expectations and buyers were, feeling a little bit more leverage, but it does feel like there's a better balance right now.
Yeah, it feels pretty stabilized, I guess
good.
you can say. It's pretty consistent.
I think the big change we're starting to see is more momentum in transactions.
Definitely.
I think we ended the year on a strong note. We're seeing that continue into January.
Oh, yeah.
I think the transaction numbers, this quarter versus the same quarter last year are up literally about 20%. That's a significant number, especially when you take into consideration that in 2021, 2022, 2023, we've had successive years of declining sales numbers. So this might be the year when we'd really finally turn that corner.
I think we're also seeing more willingness on the part of both parties, buyers and sellers, to negotiate during the inspection contingency period. Buyers are asking for concessions, sellers just saying okay, and there's negotiation going on there rather than people just storming off in a huff.
Yeah, there was a number of years there where a seller definitely just felt no need to make any concessions. And so, buyers would come and go. Again, we're back to a different parity right now. And it feels like overall the market's a lot healthier than it has been the last couple of years. Even though with pricing, it may not feel that way for some folks. But
And this is typically a very slow time of year,
Right.
transaction-wise, and we're not seeing that at all.
No.
There's a lot of hustle, bustle, and activity out there.
Yeah, this is the most activity I think I've seen in, the winter months in quite a while. It's, usually we joke around, when we're on the staff side of things that we get a little breathing room in the winter.
Yeah.
That has not been the case. So
no, it's been a very busy winter. And I think you can even just feel it going around town, like getting into restaurants, things like that. It never quite felt like it slowed down around here, did it?
Right. No, the activity level downtown from Thanksgiving all the way through New Year's and then some was huge. A big increase of activity downtown.
Yeah, it certainly feels like there's still a spotlight on Santa Fe. That has not diminished over the last couple of years.
Right. And I think,
place to be.
unfortunately, with these fires, we're going to see more spotlight. People are looking for alternatives that are safe to come to.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on that for a second, because I think, this in 2024, we saw some pretty catastrophic events that have affected home insurance. We had 2 major hurricanes that went through. Granted, fortunately, not as bad as they had predicted, but still just hundreds of thousands of homes impacted by it. And then obviously in California, these current wildfires have devastated some of the highest priced real estate in the country.
Yes.
And that's going to have a downstream effect, not just people, which of course, I mean, like, I can't imagine what it's like losing everything. And so again, like just from a empathetic level, it's really challenging, but just on an economic level, there's some shuffling of what those businesses and where those people are going to go. And then of course the downstream effect of what that means for insurance, particularly in wildland fire areas like we live in here.
Yes.
And so what do we think might happen? Because it does feel tenuous.
This is very concerning. The insurance industry is in a state of upheaval. There are very serious risks out there, and trying to safeguard a home from a catastrophic event like this is very difficult. My concern is I think we're going to start to see some homes uninsurable. What is that going to impact? How kind of impact that is going to have on the pricing is going to be significant.
Yeah, because you might limit a potential, let's say you're trying to sell it, right? And you can't get insurance for a new buyer. You're going to limit your buying pool to someone who can just flat out replace it or be willing to walk away in that event, right? And that means like no mortgage, no financing. And that's going to limit that buyer pool quite a bit.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. People who can self-insure, as they call it, are few and far between.
Right.
So,
Or at least willing to, right?
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And buyers are going to start to use fire risk as a real important condition in considering where to purchase.
Yep.
Santa Fe has a lot of roads and driveways going up those mountains, and you need to have 2 points of access to have a safe neighborhood.
Right. And to your point there, actually, it's like, sometimes I think particularly David and I have had opinions about some of these rules and regs regarding, construction and how the county handles these things. But in this case of like fire preparedness, I think the rules that they have in place are pretty damn important right now.
Yes.
Yeah, now more than ever.
Yeah.
And I think, to touch on what David's talking about is, I just want to mention it's not necessarily always properties that are up in, Hyde Park and the High Summit. We've seen some of our own sellers have their insurance policies canceled and they're closer down to the city. So it's, that's what makes this contingency so important for buyers. I think it's often overlooked, unfortunately, because people just think, oh, well, I'll just get insurance. It's easy, but it's becoming more and more difficult. The Federal Reserve had mentioned, I saw this somewhere, that home insurance providers have posted, they haven't posted a profit since 2017, I believe it was. And so you can definitely expect those insurance prices to go up, especially after what's happening now in California.
Yeah, there's a lot of loss that they're going to want to recoup.
Well, and to that point, like if I'm a buyer looking at properties like this, I feel like that should be one of my first questions, maybe even before making an offer, is like, can I insure this property, right? So, it's really critical to do your due diligence up front before even putting something under contract. Call around, see what's insurable, and make sure that it fits within your budget or your expectations, because it might not be full coverage even, right? You might be in a situation where you can cover some, but not all.
Yes.
And, again, that's a risk reward thing that people need to figure out for themselves, but it's going to be a challenging area for a while. And I suspect that in the coming months, as the fallout from this continues, that a lot of homeowners are going to be asked to make adjustments maybe to the current living situation.
Yes.
And so, things like fire suppression, removing of vegetation, what type of roof you have, like a foam roof is very...
There are roofs that are very
risky.
flammable.
It's very
and roofs
flammable, yeah.
that are not at all flammable. And
Right.
trimming the trees and cutting them down and creating buffers between what is combustible and where the residence is going to be big.
Yeah.
Homeowners really need to pay attention to that hard right now.
Yep. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing county vehicles going around testing hydrants in places like that too, right? It's like this is a new world that we're kind of entering right now as we all kind of figure this out. And I think as prices have gone up, obviously your insurance has to be able to cover those prices that those properties are at. And so it's just that relationship that we have to get used to. If the homes are going to cost a lot, your insurance is going to cost a lot too. And that's just the nature of the game.
And historically in Santa Fe and in New Mexico, insurance and property taxes have been very affordable and low cost.
Yep.
And I think the days of that, particularly with the insurance, are gone now.
Agreed. It's gonna be challenging for a while.
So what are your thoughts about where the market is going to head this year?
Oh boy, everything feels so predictable right now. Like, how can we be wrong?
Yes.
Right? Gabs, let's start with you. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a fairly comparable market to what we saw last year without the big dips like we saw in February and June.
Right.
I think it's going to be fairly consistent throughout. I don't think you're going to see any prices go down, especially not with the interest rates. So I think we're going to see a fairly steady market. Like I said, without those big dips.
Mm-hmm. David?
We've had 3 consecutive years of declining sales. I think this is going to be the first year where that turns around. I think the number of transactions will see an increase of 10 to 20% this year. Mm-hmm. And I think prices will modestly move up just a little bit.
Okay. I'm with David. I think prices will modestly move up. I think that we're going to see a more lively first quarter than we're used to. Interest rates are going to stay the same. I think buyers are going to continue to get used to those, but as we've been talking about, the insurance rates are going to slow things down a little bit.
So I'm kind of basing this on a different barometer. We dabble in commercial real estate quite a bit here in
Yes.
the office, and it feels like there's a lot of momentum in that world right now. And to me, that's an indicator of sort of the housing market is going to follow sort of the lead on some of these things coming to life, right? And so my suspicion is that I think Albuquerque and Santa Fe, for better and for worse, are looking at a growth period over the next couple of years. And I think this first year is going to be pretty pivotal in that as some of these new homes, new developments, things like that come to light. And as that happens, we're all going to have to adjust to what that means for us, right? A lot of people moved here from places that they didn't want those things, right?
Yes.
And ironically, they're the reason that they change, right? And so I think the good news there is that there's going to be more options for buyers this year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The inventory levels are going to be good. There's going to be more product coming to market. Terms might be more favorable as developers and so forth try to get wheels under them. And the flip side of that is it spells growth. And the best we can do is, stay involved in sort of local politics and make sure your voice is heard and make sure that these things are done in a smart way. And that's what we can hope for. So will the market stay where it's at? I think it's going to go up a little bit. I think we're going to see more transactions and more higher prices slightly. Not a lot, but just a little bit.
Right. Well, we've always had impact on our market from what is happening up in Los Alamos. And I think we've had several years now where the pressure in Los Alamos keeps growing and growing because they're hiring more people. Mm-hmm. They need employees and they need a place to live. Mm-hmm. Yep. And there is virtually nothing to be had up in Los Alamos. So that is putting very real market pressure in Santa Fe. And I think somewhere along the line, we're going to start to see some real growth associated with Los Alamos.
And on a tangent, I think the same thing for Espanola. I think there's some areas around Espanola that are starting to see a little bit of life come back into them as people are using, finding cheaper options down there and breathing some new life into it. So it's an exciting time in that respect.
Yes.
But get used to the change because I think change is coming whether or not you want to be a part of it. Okay, closing sort of notes here. So we got some challenges ahead this year.
Yep.
Like we all know
Interest
that.
rates.
Interest rates.
Boy, I wish I could feel that they were going to be coming down, but I'm not sensing that at all.
It's like interest rates, insurance, right? Negotiations. People need to be understanding and willing to work together, right? What other things maybe should people keep on the radar for 2025?
I'm going to say understand your contracts, right? I get that sometimes they're a bit lengthy. Read through them, ask questions, and really understand your deadlines. I'm going to go back to the insurance contingency. All too often, buyers are putting in a short time frame for that. But with what's happening in California and how that might impact us here, give yourself some cushion with some of those deadlines so that you have the proper amount of time to do your due diligence, because you don't want to be caught in a situation where, you're out of time.
Yep.
I think especially for people buying new construction, the contracts are critical because they're very different from the resale purchase contracts. So pay attention to those. A lot of times they're very heavily weighted in favor of the builder. So you need to make sure that you understand that because you're not going to be allowed to change them. Builders frown upon that.
And I think in other issues, the Department of Justice has decided that they're not done with the National Association of Realtors and our industry.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to feel impacts and changes in our industry as we need to adopt to whatever new regulations they decide to come up with.
I think we're all in agreement that the current stage of that we're in right now isn't really great. And it's confusing buyers, it's confusing sellers, frankly, it's confusing brokers.
Yes.
And so so maybe there's some good news to come out of that, but it's yet to be seen. So yeah, it's all possible this year. You know, it feels like it's a very transformative moment. And so we'll look back on this at the end of next year and see how wrong we are.
We did pretty good with this year's predictions.
Yeah, but boy, we'll see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys. Thank you.